Hey, everybody, welcome. It's the Real Hot Talk. And let me tell you, we're really excited to be here tonight because we don't have any picks tomorrow. So we figure we'll take the time today and do some chit chat before we come back on Friday to talk about the actual picks we have and then to sum it all up toward the end of the weekend. But, it's been kind of an eventful day, so be it, for Seahawks because holy crap, we got a press conference today. And how long had it been since we had heard from our fearless leaders? It had been a minute.
Was it the end of the season?
Yeah, literally. We had nothing all off season.
Holy cow. Last time we heard from any of them, right? Brian Schottenheimer was expected to come back. He had no reason to think he wouldn't be back.
It was that 7-10.
Yes.
That was the last one. You're right.
Crazy. Wow. Crazy. So obviously joining me tonight, Brian is not here, so I'm stepping in as host. And so joining me, of course, we have Nathan Ernst, we have Jeff Simmons, and then of course there's Evan, who I noticed on our Patreon, someone was trying to steal your name. I thought that was kind of funny, but it was good. We're excited for that new member that just joined. So you'll have to go check that out. Tonight, you guys, we're going to talk about that press conference. It was an hour long and it went through a lot of information, true information, embellished information, real information. We'll all decide that as we go along. And then of course, we are going to talk about the 3 whole draft picks that we have as of now. So let's go ahead and start with, and I already know how you guys are going to answer this, but let's start with Pete Carroll. One of the very first comments he had was, our number 1 pick this year is Jamal Adams. Do you guys still all hate that so much as I love it? Are you good with it now? Are you finally okay with it? Jeff, I'm going to start with you because I'm a little afraid of what Nathan's going to say, but go ahead.
I'm still mixed on it. I still think they vastly overpaid. I really do like Adams as a player, but I will say this. I'm a big draft guy. I've really gotten into this draft in the last week and a bit. The more I've dug into this draft, I sort of understand why they were willing to give up the capital. I still think they overpaid for a safety, too much capital for sure. But this draft there's not a lot of impact players or in the 20s. And I see why they were willing to give that up it doesn't seem like the top 17 in this draft, top 15 are really interesting. After that, it's sort of like role player, a lot of them. And I'm more willing to accept that they traded. I still think the fact that they haven't traded them, they haven't signed them is kind of complicating the whole thing. But I do understand why they're willing to give up the capital in this draft. The more I look, I put out a poll on Twitter the other day, like who would you want if we still had pick 23? And I know Derek wrote us. I had a bunch of answers. None of the answers really got me excited. Mm-hmm. And the more I think about it, I get why they did it for a proven commodity. But again, I still think, if I'm being honest, it was an overpay.
Gotcha. I forget that Brian is my only comrade in this one. So Nathan, do you still hate this trade so much, or are you better with it, especially after watching all the mocks and all the people talking about how this draft is going to be weird, which we're going to talk about later, but are you still real down on it?
I'm not really down on it. Clearly Jamal Adams is a good player and stuff, so it's not like just they threw it away. But yeah, my opinion hasn't changed on it. I think they paid way too much. And even if you're of the opinion that I don't know what they would do if they still had their pick, right? They would trade down and they would have more later picks and they would, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, I think my opinion hasn't changed at all, basically.
Awesome. Gotcha. It was interesting. And I think we talked about this, Evan, last time that we were all on together about how you look at the players that are out there and how weird this draft is. And like I said, when we get to the draft, we'll talk about that more, but you have to think, at least with a healthy Jamal Adams, if he was coming straight out of college, he would without question be a first round player. And I think that's where my brain comes from. I think that if this kid was in the draft, we'd be thrilled.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's an exceptionally talented player. I'm sort of in the Nathan camp right now, but I will say this. I will feel better once they get him under a contract.
Yeah, agreed.
And an extension is done. I have a lot of anxiety around his cost increasing every single day with some of the pending, safeties that haven't signed yet and are about to hit the market with big extensions. Derwin James is a huge name that's going to be coming up soon. Justin Simmons just signed for, I think, $16.25 million per year. So that's really right now the floor for Jamal Adams. So from a cap perspective, I'll feel better once he's under extension. But yeah, I mean, he's a talented player. They got to keep him in the fold. You know, what's done is done with the trade. There's no use complaining about it now. And he's a leader on this defense moving forward.
For sure. And I think they mentioned that a couple of times in the presser. They came back to it a few times in the press conference today about how they see Jamal Adams in their future. They are in talks with him. And so to be quite honest with you, that answer sat better with me than a lot of times the pat answer that we get from them are, oh, you know, we're focused on the draft right now. We'll get to that after. And that would have not sat well with me. But the fact that they flat out came out and said, if you want to believe it or not, but they came out and said, oh no, this is a conversation we're having. We're working on this. We're getting there. And so that made me feel a little better about it. And that was encouraging to me. The other, there was a whole list of things.
I didn't get all the way through the press conference. Did they say they were working on it with Adams?
They
actually imply that it's going to happen later in the summer.
Yeah.
Because I remember the question somebody asked, is he willing to play on his 5th year option? And John stuttered for a few seconds and then said, we're not there in the process yet.
Okay. Did anyone else notice how uncomfortable John looked just the entire time? Like he looked like he had to take a dump for an hour.
I thought he looked hungover. I'm not going to lie. I'm not
so
being disrespectful. He just kind of did. He kind of just looked hungover to me.
It was hard to watch him.
Hey guys, it's been a long pandemic. Okay. Josh Schneider's taking it like all of us have.
That's fair. I'm trying to find that quote, but from what I remember from the conversation, and I'm sorry that I don't have it just right here. It says, his quote was, we want him to be here for a long time for sure. He's going to be a very important part of our future. But there was more of that after that, where he said, you know, that we plan on getting this done. And I think that was, and that's not the exact quote, but that was what it was inferring. So it seemed to me that
I'll say this, Dayna, this is what I'll say. If we get, we don't have to dive into this topic too deep, but when we're approaching training camp and a few days away from start, and if there's not an extension yet, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous about a potential threat of a holdout. I know that's completely speculative, but he's just one of their star players. You have to get him under contract, and it makes no sense to wait as long as they have, in my opinion.
And we have to remember that there's 2 really empty months between the draft and so there's lots of time there, you know, to get that done. The next thing that they kind of chatted about a little bit was they did bring up Brian Schottenheimer. And I thought this was bizarre, these comments. So someone came out and asked him, you know, so what were your differences? You said, you know, in your press release that there was differences. So what were they? And Pete really kind of stumbled over his words, which to me made me think that he was not comfortable with that decision. But basically what he says is that sometimes you just have to make a change. Sometimes there just has to be, you know, a switch up. That they wanted to, I think he said, continue to grow and expand and utilize their personnel. So to me, and this is just my take, that reeked of a decision that he was not 100% behind. Did you guys get that feeling at all? Anybody?
I definitely wouldn't say that. Like, if he wasn't behind it 100%, it wouldn't have happened, right? Like,
I don't know that that's true.
Yeah, I got the opposite. My view was that he fired him, and like,
really? See, I thought the way he answered it, the way he stumbled it, I just got the feeling that it just wasn't. Maybe he just didn't like the question, and that's totally.
I think Mike Duger, who asked, shout out to Mike, great question.
He did.
I think he caught people off guard.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Mike Duger and Joe Fan always ask the most uncomfortable questions, and they do it so, you know, with just the perfect tone. We got to shout those guys out. They're phenomenal.
It was so direct.
Yeah.
And it was so direct and so casual. It was just, hey Pete, so what were the philosophical differences with Brian? Not Schottenheimer, not Coach. It was, what was the philosophical difference with Brian? And Pete was like,
I know, he totally stumbled, which maybe then I misinterpreted, but I really felt like he was like, well, and he was trying to find an answer for whatever the team had put out there, instead of Because remember, right before they fired him, he said he was going to be there for a long time. So that's why I was like, maybe he wasn't totally down with this, but maybe he got, I hate to say outvoted, but because we know that he pulls a lot of has a lot of the pull there, but I just didn't feel like he was comfortable with it. But again, he might not have been comfortable with the question for sure. I did think it was weird. And then that was it. Like no one brought it up again. No one mentioned another thing about it. So I thought that was a little bizarre too, because that was a huge change for this team, I thought. Anyway, but we all know what the majority of the press conference was about. All about Russell Wilson, disgruntled Russell Wilson. And I'm going to go to you, Nathan, because you said in our group chat, they just sat there and did nothing but lie. Tell me why you think that.
I mean, like, I think some of the stuff that he even said was contradictory. Like, it was all the media, but I was talking to Russ every day. And I knew where we were. And John was like, and I was talking to his agent every day. And I'm like, so like clearly, and like, he was obviously mad about what Russ had said, right? Mm-hmm. At the very least, like, he felt Russ should have known better, and that was like abundantly clear. But I don't know, there was so much interesting stuff. Like it seemed clear too that like they were blindsided by the teams he would be traded to, because he was like, I was talking to Russ and we're gonna stay quiet on this, right? And then that came out, and I just thought that was unfortunate. And like I don't know. I mean, I think that they probably did just lie about a lot of stuff. I think clearly, like, I mean, and the reporters pushed them on this, and I thought they did a good job. Like, you can't just pretend this is all the media. Like, Russ said this stuff, right? And like, whoever leaked that, like either Russ or his agent leaked that list of teams they want to be traded to, and you don't do that if everything's just honky dory.
Nathan, Mark Rogers put his name on it.
Yeah. There was no leak. It was
It was like, it was Adam Schefter tweeting, Mark Rogers, agent of Russell Wilson, says these are the 4 potential trade destinations.
Yeah. And
like,
I get the feeling like that maybe there was some disconnect between Mark Rogers and Russ on that, actually. I don't know that they were lockstep on that.
I do too.
But I mean, but at the end of the day, like, it's his agent, like,
or it's just Mark Rogers like playing bad cop. You know what I mean?
Right. Who knows?
It's so fun.
So I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously, like, Pete's number one goal. Well, I mean, I think 2 things were obvious. Pete was mad. He has not had a fun offseason with all that, I don't think. And then the other thing is, like, he just was desperately trying to deflect everything as much as possible.
Well, I just want to hammer this point home. You guys saw the specific like quote or his response to the Mark Rogers listing the 4 destinations, right? Because that quote response was a little more escalated than everything else he was saying. I wish I had the quote up in front of me, but it was like that. It was something, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was like, that took things to the next level, escalated the situation. That was really unnecessary. Here's the thing. Pete's going to blame this stuff on like the media being speculative, but like the media didn't force Mark Rogers to list 4 trade destination spots to Adam Schefter and tweet it out. Like, that's not the media. So yeah, it was a fascinating sort of, I've never seen, Jeff mentioned this earlier, I've actually never seen, I think, Pete Carroll and John Schneider that uncomfortable in a press conference before.
And I wonder if that's why they put it off for so long, because they knew it was coming and they knew they were eventually going to have to say something. And, and a lot of the things I agree with Nathan and Jeff, I'm going to come to you after this, but I agree with Nathan where they contradicted themselves a lot because they kept saying, well, we just wanted to stay quiet. We just wanted to stay quiet, but there was never a problem. We always knew the truth. I don't know how many times they said that in this press conference. And to me, if you knew the truth, you would have come out and said, well, that's a bunch of BS and we're moving on. They never did. They kept their mouth shut. And I know it's all about protect the team, but to protect the team, you'd be like, this is just a bunch of crap. So these are the quotes. And I'm going to come to you, Jeff. So he said that John Schneider said, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson are 2 of the most passionate people I know. And passionate people say passionate things. Okay. I get that because we all have seen the clip of Russ on the sideline shaking his fist. I hate losing. And so you know that he gets there, right? He gets to that space. But here's the interesting case. Carroll says he's talked extensively with Wilson this offseason and that they worked through whatever was at hand at the time. There was only one thing at hand. There was nothing else, right? The speculation in the media was a factor in how his words were portrayed. It was a direct quote. It's not like they spun it, right? And then it was, we addressed all of it immediately. I told Russell early on that this could be a long issue that we're dealing with in the media, and I wasn't going to say a word. That is completely illogic to me from a PR standpoint. Jeff, you watched this press conference. Did it feel as fake to you as it did to Nathan, or do you think there were nuggets of truth in it? Where did you think? Because it was a little bizarre.
There were some things I found really bizarre, and there were some things I found really enlightening. So I thought Pete got a lot better. The more the press conference went on, he got a lot more comfortable, and he actually said a lot of interesting things. But early on, he was sort of digging out of a hole. And the one thing that I found really interesting is that both John and Pete talked about how they had like an organizational philosophy not to talk about this story and not to comment and just sit back and let the media talk, which in my opinion made everything much worse. Mm-hmm. So I don't really understand. Pete was like, this goes back to Bud Grant in the 1970s. Like, I don't understand why that would be a philosophy on the media so different today than it would have been back then with Twitter and with daily talk shows. And to me, if that was their philosophy, that's just stupid. And the fact that they haven't talked, I've talked to beat writers about this, I think it's bad PR. Mm-hmm. I think your job is to get in front of a story like this. And I think they could have prevented a lot of this. But one thing I did hear, and a lot of the comments they did verify, I heard behind the scenes, I know Jeremy Fowler and sort of Brandon Marshall has talked about this. One thing I did hear is that Pete and Russell have been communicating in the last month and a bit better than ever. And that was why Russell was recruiting in free agency. And I've heard that Pete and communicated with Russell, and they've been really good. And I know Brandon Marshall said they're in as good as a spot as they've ever been. This might have helped their relationship. But I don't agree with like John laughing like, oh, we were sitting and watching these media shows, and that's bullshit. Like, there's no way you want everyone talking about your quarterback wanting to leave and your agent. That whole thing is just like eye roll stupid. Like Nathan said, they're lying. That's idiotic if that's true.
Can I read this quote that I was just speaking about earlier? I found it on Twitter from Joe Fan. So this was in response to the 4-team trade destination landing thing. This is Pete talking. I had made a clear statement to Russ. Let's shut this down and be quiet on this stuff. We don't need to say anything. We know the truth of what's going on. When that came out, that kind of got it over the top. And it opened up some other conversations that didn't need to happen. That was an example of why we're quiet and we don't say anything. It was so meaningless because it had nothing to do with what was going on. It kind of gave another little bite at it that people could talk about. And I wish we would have avoided that, is what I'm saying. That seems significant.
Mark Rodgers got his hand slapped by the team is basically what that was.
They must hate Mark Rodgers so much. And to me, that is hilarious because it means Mark is doing an excellent job at being Russell's agent.
Yeah, it's interesting. The quotes, I mean, they just go on and on. I think, they talked about every year has its issues. As long as we're communicating, we're fine. But he said, the big thing is there's a time we violate any of our guidelines that we set. In this case, rule number 1 is always protect the team was challenged. I was clear with the Russ. It looked like there was a problem and there wasn't. It was a media problem. Well, if you had to clear it with Russ, then there was a problem. You know what I mean? It's like, I just found that very interesting. But the best quote of the entire press conference came right out of this. And that was when they said that they had dealt with drama from everyone forever, from Maple Bars to Marshawn. And honest to God, I busted out laughing because it's kind of true. This team is always built around drama, and poor Golden Tate will never live down the donuts. But I do think that is, it was interesting. But I agree with you, Jeff. I think that they are kind of in a better place now. I think that they probably shook the cobwebs out. And remember, we've said this before, we aren't used to Russell ever rocking the boat. And he rocked the boat, and maybe it made the team better. And that could really end up being a good thing for the team. So, all right. So the other thing, and we haven't talked about this because this has just happened recently. They were asked about the Aldon Smith situation, and they said, of course, that they can't comment on it, that they're just going to kind of let the legal process play out. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I got a lot of flack online about this. first of all, I want to say I was never happy about Aldon Smith being signed. Go look through my Twitter, find it anywhere. I never said I was happy about it. I'm fine with it, but I'm not happy about it. But I got a lot of flack that people are like, oh, you hate Antonio Brown, but you'll take Aldon Smith. And we talked about that was a little different. I think that they were in kind of different situations. And by the way, Antonio Brown is staying in Tampa Bay, and I'm perfectly happy with that. But I want to know how you guys feel about Aldon Smith, if he should play, if he doesn't play, like that whole situation. Do you think he could be an asset for the team? Evan, let's start with you. What are your feelings on Smith?
Oh, you're going to give me first jab at this? Wonderful.
I can go to someone else if you want.
No, we had talked about this when he signed, and I think you and I even actually had a specific conversation over this, Dayna. This was before this recent incident, okay? After he had signed, there was like a 3 or 4 day window there. I shouldn't laugh because it's such a small amount of time, but like I was like, we were talking about it, and I was like, I really think, like, I genuinely believe this from what I've read and what I've seen other people say. Like, I think Aldon Smith is sincere about like his road to recovery, like in rehabilitation. I'm inclined to give people second chances, and I believe in second chances, but I also believe in consequences for your actions. This recent incident is obviously very concerning. Jeff said it very well. History is not on his side. I do not think Aldon Smith deserves the benefit of the doubt. But with that said, there have been some rumored contextual pieces to this that supposedly the person he assaulted, it sounds like almost killed his sister, like strangled her or something around those lines. And if that's the situation, I think it's a little bit different, but it's still concerning to me that this is even a situation. With his history, it's just, this is tough. It's not great.
Right. And I agree with you. There has been some information come out, and a lot of people were like, oh, you do you, Aldon Brown, if you, if you guys need to go get him, and Aldon Smith and go beat the guy up, whatever is. But it still shows a pattern of behavior. It still shows a lack of trust that you can trust his judgment. And I think that's where that's concerning. Nathan, what do you think? Do you think Aldon Brown could add enough to this team to bring the possible drama with him? Would that balance out any?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what drama Aldon Smith is really bringing, right? I mean, he's got legal issues now, and they'll need to work through that. And so, I mean, it's going to be, we'll see what his availability is and stuff like that. And that's something the team will have to decide whether that's a headache they want or not. I mean, for me, you mentioned, people criticizing being okay with Aldon Smith and not with Antonio Brown. And I've gotten that too. I think addiction, right, and battling with that is a very different thing than what Antonio Brown has been accused of. And I think Aldon Smith has been much more transparent about his struggles and has talked about that. And, so I think, there's just worlds difference between what these two guys have been in trouble for and what they've struggled with, and where their, mindset seems to be today, and how kind of, repentant they are about it. Right. And so, to me, it obviously sucks. Like, I mean, this is a bad situation, and, and it's a guy that's, I don't know, he kind of, it seems like he kind of brought this one on himself. Who knows what the whole story is, but he's a guy that's really battled through a lot of hard stuff to get back, and, could have helped the team maybe. And now, you don't know where it's all going to go. And that just kind of sucks.
What about you, Jeff? Do you think that he would be a good addition? I mean, I know there are a lot of people who are excited about what he can do, but honestly, he hasn't really played all that much, and so I don't know. So if the NFL is going to wait it out and see what happens, or if the charges should get dropped, like, has happened with other players, whatever may happen, do you see him as a good addition to this team?
I think it's a nice, depth luxury thing. And even John today was sort of like, we saw it, he's at the vet minimum. Why not take a flyer on him?
Right.
that's essentially what he is at this point. Like, he showed flashes last year at the beginning of the season, and he was playing like 800 snaps a game, and not 800 snaps a game, but he played 800 snaps last year.
I was about to say.
Yeah, that's a lot of snaps. He played like 800 snaps last year, and by the end of the year, he was just out of gas. Like, he hadn't been in the league, and how long? Dallas had no depth. So I don't think he's what he was. He was like a Von Miller level player coming at us. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's a nice piece to have his depth. It would be a good body to have in camp. But to me, like, if he doesn't play a snap, like, I don't think twice about it. Mm-hmm. To me, the more interesting thing was John's comment today. And it was sort of a weird one and sort of a little uncomfortable, that he was like, I don't really like making blanket statements anymore, and sort of regret that I have done that, because I know a lot of people have brought up his previous comments regarding domestic violence. That Frank Clark pick, really, there was a lot of pushback, and some of the early picks where I just know from being around sports that teams are willing to give second chances for talented players. And so I don't have some of the stronger opinions that some people have, because it's an unfortunate reality. That's just how sports teams think. But to me, that was the more interesting comment, that John sort of walked back from it saying, I wish I didn't say that, and that we're going to look at each case individually. And you saw how they handled the Quinton Dunbar thing last year, where he was about to go to jail for all indications, and they stood with him and they waited it out, and they hid behind the due process. And I think that's just what's going to happen here. If he doesn't play a snap, I don't think they have enough bodies at that spot where I don't really care. But I found that comment a little weird and a bit uncomfortable. I don't know how you guys felt.
Do you know what piece of that comment was the most interesting to me? It was the final 6 or 7 words of it, where he referenced his contract specifically. It was something that I think we all kind of knew deep down, but it sort of validates in reality, in the spoken word, hearing John Schneider say, hey, we're willing to sign a troubled person, no matter what they've done, if, they're not a significant cap liability or risk to us. That is very different than the blanket comments that he referenced. And he said himself in 2014, 2013, 2015, whatever the heck it was. So to hear that sort of shift was uncomfortable. Yeah. I think that's a generous way of putting it.
Go ahead, Dana.
No. I was just gonna say, because it puts a dollar sign on, it's almost like a bet. It just makes it kind of dirtier, even though we all know it's true, makes it dirtier. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was actually happy that he walked that back. I mean, we all knew that they did not have a zero tolerance domestic abuse policy. Like, they had proven that time and time again. But I think one of the problems when you have a zero tolerance policy and you say, like with the Frank Clark thing, like they got pushed on that. And I think it was Condota maybe that just straight up asked, does this mean that you don't think he hit her? And Schneider more or less said yes. Right. And so that really gets into, like, you're starting to, you're just basically calling his accuser a liar. Right. And that is very gross. So I think, walking it back and saying, hey, we're going to look at this on a case by case situation. And what I wish he would have said is, I believe in second chances. He didn't say anything about second chances. And I think that is the more important thing, because, do I think that Frank Clark should have never been allowed to play in the league? Not really, right? But I also think that Schneider shouldn't have framed it the way he did, that he didn't believe it happened at all, right? But then I do agree, like, bringing it back to the contract thing, like, and then he just, like, that was an especially kind of skeevy way to end it. Like, yeah, we'll throw a minimum contract bet on him and see what
it's
shakes
not gonna
out.
cost me anything. That
was very, like, you could have done this a lot better, buddy.
It just felt dirty. It felt
dirty.
Exactly,
that's what I mean. That's what I meant by uncomfortable.
Like, we all know it's reality, but it just feels dirty.
Yeah.
Yep. And, I get a lot of flack for my hate for Antonio Brown, and I could get into lots of reasons why on that one. I think that situation is really different than a lot of these other situations. But I'm not going to waste your guys' time on that. But I will say this. I also believe that there are people out there with true remorse, and when they're young, they do stupid things. And if they can learn from it and grow. And so I think that you guys are right. It's okay to say, we're going to give this guy a second chance. If he does it again, we're done. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't really necessarily, it's fair to take, a sophomore in college or a junior in college career away from him because of something that supposedly happened and we didn't know if it happened and blah, 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 blah. I think when it's more concrete, I think that's a different conversation. People can call me a hypocrite all they want to, but I just think that that's the difference here. So I agree with you guys there, believe it or not. They did talk about Waldron a little bit today. So that was nice. I'm still dying. I want a full presser with that dude. Like I want to, get into a conversation with him. I think that would be interesting. Carol said on Waldron, he said, we've established stuff. How vague is this? This is so Seattle. We've established stuff that Russ, Chris Carson, DK, and Tyler are really good at. Football?
Oh, thanks for that detail.
Are they good? Are they good at football? They have strengths that we need to continue to build from. That's what carries over. The continuity of blending things is what is crucial about accentuating the positives and the newness. We're trying to accentuate the rhythm part of the offense and how it fits with play actions and stuff down the field. When I was 15-year-old and in high school, I could have written that sentence. It was so non-informative. I was super frustrated. What did you guys think about? It's just annoying to me. I don't know. Did you guys want more? I mean, of course, they're not going to give us plans and schemes and that stuff, but did you want more? Are you looking for more information about Waldron and what he expects to bring? Jeff, what about you?
I know that quote wasn't great, but I actually found he said some interesting things about, he was sort of hinting at a
Can I say, this is what I love about Jeff. He'll find an interesting thing in every single comment, and I love that.
I texted Evan this during the thing. He was hinting at more wholesale changes. Because when Shoddy came here, his view was very different. And I know like Gerald Everett was talking about like how like scheme-wise, Waldron is really different than a lot of the people he's been around. And he kept indicating that like Waldron is bringing like they're unveiling something new. And to me, that sort of thing is exciting because when Shoddy came here, it just seemed like Pete had him basically, this is what you're going to do. And if you try to pass, we're going to wring your neck. And so I found that there were some interesting hints that they're going to have more of a new offense than we're used to. Because he kept talking about Russell's learning all this new stuff. And I found that interesting.
Like I've always said, Jeff, I highly admire Pete Carroll's, humility and willingness to hire a coach from, the best head coaching staff in the NFC West. It's props to him, frankly.
Good God.
What? I'm just complimenting Pete Carroll, as I always do.
I'm sure you are. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see. I mean, of course, we don't expect them to give us any details, but I think it'll be interesting to see, how this unfolds. I'm excited, but at the same time, it's not like I expected him to come out and say, oh, we're going to do the same shit we did last year and hope that nobody notices. I mean, because even if that's what they were going to plan to do, they're not going to come out and say it, right? It's crazy. They talked about. Go ahead.
Read the DK and Lockett part of that quote again.
Yes, we've established stuff that Russ, Chris Carson, DK, and Tyler are really good at. They have strengths that we need to continue to build from. That's what carries over.
Huh. Okay. I mean, the one thing that I have tried to like pick out of all the Waldron stuff is, or it seems like you can pick out from all the Waldron stuff, is like they want to utilize their players differently, right? Like, and more like Lockett talked about playing, more inside and out and that kind of stuff, and talking about growing on their strengths and stuff like that. I don't know if that really applies to that particular quote, but that seems to be the thing that really sticks out to me, is that they really want to do different stuff with their guys.
Yeah, I think we can hope, right? I mean, well, what they did with DK was actually pretty good, but let's hope they can work on the rest of that. They talked about KJ Wright for just a minute. Snyder said he thought he'd be signed by now.
That was interesting. He basically admitted that they had no plan to re-sign him and they thought he'd be gone.
Right. But now they're having conversations with him again. And I think that that's interesting. He said, Carroll said he had a good sit down with him the other day. And then what does this mean? We're nose to nose on the deal. What does that even mean? Anybody? No.
That whole thing was weird where he's like, we had to sort of explain our perspective and we had to get him on the, like, were they telling them that we're not signing you? Were they trying to get him to come back for cheap? It was very odd.
Yeah, I don't get that. They talked about a lot of the players out there. They talked about an Ethan Posick, Kyle Fuller camp battle. I thought that was a good thing to kind of bring up. They talked basically about all their signings and how they really feel like they're set. I read on Twitter though, and we're going to talk about the draft soon, but this kind of will lead into that. Someone said after this press conference, and I don't remember who it was. It was just a person on Twitter said, well, if you factor in Darrell Taylor, we have a 4th pick. And that's a really interesting point because we have no idea how.
Very Pete logic.
Well, no, Pete didn't say it. This was
I know, but that's the kind of thing Pete would.
And it's like, it's kind of true though, because we have no idea. We have no idea, right? Like this kid's new. He's a new toy who actually just knows the playbook maybe a little bit. It was really, they seemed really excited about their extension with Tyler. They seemed really excited about Gabe Jackson, Chris Carson, that they talked about how important it was to get him back, which again, I found interesting because I didn't get that impression at the end of the season. So, and Poona Ford, they mentioned him too, bringing Carlos Dunlap. So you can tell this whole presser, they're really impressed with what they have done in free agency, in the off season prior to the draft. So I want to know from you guys, are they going to keep pumping this up because they only have 3 draft picks? So they're not going to be able to say much about the draft. And so they're just going to keep talking about how good they've already got it to make fans feel better. Because there's fans like you, Jeff, who love draft capital. I'm not as big on it, but I know you are. So them reiterating how good the offseason is that, do you think that they're hedging their bet a little bit, or do you really feel like they're completely comfortable with 3 draft picks?
I do think on one hand that they have done a good job like rounding out their roster. Like teams usually go into the draft with pretty clear holes. And if you look at Seattle right now, they really don't have, they've really added a lot of bodies and they've really covered up themselves. And they were aggressive in free agency in a way we thought they should have been last year. And they really, like if you look at their holes, it's center, 3rd receiver, and probably another cornerback. But they have a lot of bodies at cornerback. They have 2 really good receivers, and they might actually like Ethan Posick. But every time they kept talking about Ethan Posick, it seemed like he had a Freudian slip, and he kept pausing. He's like, yeah, we're going to bring in Posick with Kyle Fuller. Yeah. I was annoyed that no one asked about the receiver position. Like I thought that was like the stuff that came out about Swain. They haven't touched it. I thought that would have been a really good question, but obviously the media had a million things to talk about today. But to me, those are the clear holes on the team, and they don't have a ton of holes going into a draft like a lot of teams typically do. So I think that is true in one sense. But they'll probably end up with more than 3 picks, and they probably need to add in some youth to this roster.
Right. So let's talk about these picks. As of right now, Seattle has in round 2, the number 56 overall, in round 4, the 129 pick, and round 7, the 250 pick. Nathan, how likely is it they trade out of the 2nd round?
99.9%. Oh, I don't know about out of the 2nd. What are they at? 53?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, out of that pick in the 2nd round.
Okay, yeah. My odds wouldn't drop a whole lot for out of the 2nd round. No, I think it's almost a certainty. It's smart. It's a good thing to do. It's something that they love to do. And it's something that they desperately need to do this year. So, they're the Seahawks, so they'll, of course, do that. They'll just stay there and pick, even though everything seems to point to them doing the other thing. But it just seems like this is just such a smart and them thing to do. How could they not do it?
It
Nathan,
seems really obvious.
They're the Seahawks is why they won't do it. But
Nathan, are there any players on the roster specifically that you think would be good potential, trade away people for that mid-round draft capital that Seattle is looking to add in this year's draft? Or is probably looking to add?
Well, let's see. Are there any running backs they could trade?
Oh my God.
Okay, but that was like a serious question too. Is like, I want to bring that into the conversation. Is there a reality or a potential situation where you could see Seattle sticking and picking at 56 or whatever it is, and maybe offloading a player to compensate for some of that mid-round loss? Why are you laughing?
I don't know what he's gonna say.
I mean, do you think you get like a third rounder maybe for Jamal Adams?
I'm not. Shut the hell.
That's one option.
You're such an asshole.
Just say Rashad Penny, get it over with, and move on. For God's sake.
For Jamal Adams, God damn it, Nathan. Okay, so the question wasn't should they do it. The question was, could you see a reality? Like, could you see them doing that?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, absolutely right. Obviously not Jamal. I mean, I don't know that Jamal is completely out of the question. That'd be a huge shock, right? But like, you would hope they would get more than a mid-round pick. Penny obviously is the guy that's very disposable, has the draft pedigree. Who knows what you can really actually get for him? Because the other thing with Penny too is I don't think he's that cheap relative to other running backs. He's not super expensive either, I don't think, but he's not like he's a rookie contract, but running backs don't make a lot of money. The one that's actually interesting, and this one's you're gonna think I'm trolling here again, but I'm actually not. What about Will Dissly?
Oh, he pissed me off so bad the other day on Twitter. Get rid of him. Out.
Yeah, there you
Out
go.
He goes.
Oh, he did catch some flack for that tweet.
Oh,
I mean, he deserved it, but
yeah. Oh, yes. And he's from Montana, which makes it even worse. Oh, it was so embarrassing. Anyway, yeah. I've heard his name floated around too.
That's an interesting one.
It's really interesting. Like, is there a team that's willing to bet hard on his upside and look past, his knees exploding every 6 months? Like,
what's the minimum you would accept for him?
Would you take a third?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
I'd take
yeah.
a fifth.
Whoa.
I don't
Sorry.
know if
I'm mad at him.
Okay, and so while we're on the Dissly thing, I saw you were trolling Niners fans again the other day, talking about how Will Dissly is better than Kittle.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh yeah,
When the whole
I did
Kittle
do
trade
that.
thing.
Oh yeah, I did. You're right.
You don't even recognize you're doing it. It's just muscle memory.
Oh.
You just wake up in the middle of the night and your hands start tweeting, trolling.
It's been a little bit since I've gotten into an online battle with
I got a pop
Niners
quiz
Twitter.
for you.
What's the pop quiz?
Off the top of your head, what is the most amount of yards Will Dissly has caught in a single season?
218.
Yeah, it's good seasons. He's played like 6 games.
260. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking 200.
260. Wow.
I knew this shocked me because I knew it was going to be less than I expected, but that was even less than.
He's only 1 year he played like 4. First year he played 4 games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the most he's played was
5th round pick. Off we
the
go.
last year.
I mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean, he's never caught for more than 250 yards, and his knees blow up every 6 months. So, can you even get a 5th round pick for him?
I don't think so. He's on the last year of his deal.
Yeah, probably not.
I think
unless someone was real desperate for that. I think that it's interesting. I think that we all agree that they're not going to end up with just the 3 picks. I think we all pretty much can guarantee that that's not what's going to happen. Interesting quote out of John Snyder today, though. He did say that trading those picks around really happens in the moment. It happens kind of in the flow of the draft. And so it's not like he plans it. It always just works out that way, which made me laugh. Because the way he said it, he's like, I don't know, it just always works out that way. I'm like, whatever, right? They know, they have a plan. But what was interesting to me was a conversation, and I'll make this short, sorry, but the conversation I heard on SiriusXM NFL radio today, and I couldn't even tell you who the hosts were, but they were talking about the draft this year and how that due to no combine, to the medical, things coming up funny. And, he said, when you go to someone's pro day, you go to dinner before, you go to breakfast the next day, there's all this schmoozing and conversations between the players and the teams that sometimes you get a really good feel for a player that can move them up or down the draft. And none of that happened this year because of COVID, obviously. But what they were talking about is that might actually make those mid rounds even more important because you're going to start to find some real jewels in those mid rounds. And we all know that Seattle actually loves those mid rounds. So, Jeff, let's start with you. Are you okay with them completely getting out of the 2nd round completely and getting 2 4th round picks for that?
No, that would be a big mistake.
Okay.
Why? Because I think this draft specifically, the numbers are not where they usually are. I think quality more important than pure quantity in this draft.
Okay.
And I think just from talking to people and you hear, there is a pretty clear drop off somewhere around the third round. And it would be nice to get, I think they should trade back for sure, but to just go into the fourth round and not pick in the first 3 rounds of the draft, I think that's pushing it a little much.
So maybe the third round instead.
Yeah, the thing I find interesting about this draft specifically for the Seattle perspective is it actually lines up really well with their needs. The 3 strengths of the draft are interior offensive line, wide receiver, especially slot receivers. Like last year, the draft, you remember the second round had all those like power forward. They had Mims and they had Pittman and they had Higgins and they had the guys are more slot, small, quick guys this year, which sort of fits their need. And then the third one is cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe late second, move back like 8 spots, get a third, get a fourth, and you can really build on your holes in the team and come out of it okay. But to me, it would be a little too cute if they just go all the way into the fourth round.
Okay. Like they just like don't care. Because they said that he didn't say this in any way, shape, or form, but they kind of hinted at that. They're like, well, if any year we're going to do it, it's going to be this year because, this is a weird draft. And so we just kind of, he just kind of shrugged it off like it wasn't as big of a deal in the press conference, or at least that's how I felt when I heard him. And so I found that kind of interesting. They seemed a little nonchalant about the whole thing, which, fans are having meltdowns that there's only 3 picks, but they just seem to kind of blow it off a little bit. All right, let's talk about positions. I know that a few weeks back, we talked about like what we would want to see them pick. Let's say they just stuck with these 3, or they added 1 to 2 more that they wanted to pick. And I think all of us, maybe not all of us, I can't remember exactly, we're still thinking they needed to go center first. After these few weeks, are we thinking they need to still focus on center, third wide receiver right at the beginning of that draft, or the beginning of their picks, because it's not the beginning of the draft? Evan, what about you?
God, I've been radicalized to best player available over the years. I'm not sure you need to, if you had asked me this question, if you had asked me this question like 4 to 6 weeks ago, when, maybe not 4 to 6 weeks ago, 6 to 8 weeks ago, when, free agency was in full swing, I'm not sure, specifically targeting a center in the high third round or something like that would be a meaningful upgrade for this team this year over what they have right now. Mm-hmm. Ethan Posick is serviceable, but with where they're selecting, they should go best player available.
There's a lot of people who do believe that and a lot of people who really don't believe that. And I find the split between those people fascinating. Nathan, where do you land on that?
I mean, you want, I tend to lean to the BPA approach, right? But like specific to this draft, and I have paid very little attention to the draft this year. Usually I do a lot of work on it, and I've been checked out because the Seahawks have 3 picks, so maybe Jeff, you can help me on this, but my understanding of kind of where things are expected to fall, their first pick is a little bit of an awkward spot for center. Yeah. There's some guys like who's the Oklahoma center? He's expected to go well before them. Miners people really like, but that's pretty high for what, D3 guy. And then I know,
but he throws trees. Come on. It's so fun to watch.
Wait, what?
He grows trees?
Isn't that the guy who went up to Alaska and is doing all of his workouts with the trees? The guy from the D3 school? You guys got to go find his YouTube.
He does. Wait, hold up. I've heard he throws trees, and I've also heard he grows trees.
Yeah, I heard that.
He throws trees.
Pushes.
Well, is it a push or to the throw, Dayna?
He pushed it over.
Very different.
So, like when I think of
straight here, all right.
When I
can't remember now. I'm not even kidding you. But the funny thing was about this kid, and I will tell you that I sent this and I'm like, wouldn't this be fun? Just because it was quite the spectacle to watch his workouts. But was the impression that he left after the Senior Bowl because he wasn't a center before. He's a D from a D3 school, but he knocked everybody's socks off at the Senior Bowl. So it'll be interesting.
Does Jim Nagy like him?
Oh yeah.
Jim Nagy
Okay, nope. Then let's go the opposite
I'm
direction.
gonna say the danger of this draft could be a lot of Jim Nagy reliance.
I mean, Miners is interesting, right? Like, if they draft him, I'm not gonna be mad. Like, he legit tested really well. He grows, throws, or pushes trees. We're not sure. He runs around with his belly hanging out. He maybe looks a little bit. He's got a beard, you know.
He's a weed dealer. He'd fit.
Tall too.
He looks like John Moffat, actually, is who he reminds me of. Which,
oh, he does.
Yeah, that's troublesome.
Put that together until then, yeah.
Anyways, but so for me, like, I mean, if there's a good, if there's a good center there, and I do not know enough about this draft to say whether there will or won't be, then I think that maybe is still their biggest need. But man, there's a lot of fun receivers in this class, and I really want them to get a receiver. And I think they could get a really quality wide receiver at that spot potentially. So yeah, I mean, leaning a little bit BPA and thinking about where this draft might fall, I think wide receiver with their first pick makes a lot of sense.
Can I ask you guys a question about their position groups? Is there a specific group that you would label as critical level need? A single one.
I wouldn't call wide receiver critical, but man,
receiver?
Like the
Freddie
third
Swain
spot,
as your third receiver.
You're hanging on a thread there.
You might only have two professional wide receivers. And I'm talking myself into Swain and he had flashes and stuff, but like you honest to God might only have two professional wide receivers on this team.
Yeah, I think if you were going to answer, it's either like the outside cornerback, depending on what you think of some of those guys, and the third receiver. Because if one guy gets injured, it could blow up the whole thing.
I just don't know critical though. That's the word. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, because you do have serviceable backups. Are they, super, are they at the same level? No. And I get it. But critical to me means you have nothing.
To be fair though, in their, for their argument, the drop off in depth is huge. Like if DK or Lockett gets hurt, the season is not looking good. Like they're not going to go far in the playoffs if one of those two guys is hurt.
And Lockett's been hurt the last 2 years.
That's true. Yeah.
And you saw what happened in the passing game both times.
Man, you guys are talking me into this wide receiver 3 spot now.
Well, there's a lot. I'm with Nathan. I think they have to take a receiver. And I
think they will.
I said this last year too, and I don't think there's been one draft since these guys have been here where the position or the player I've said they needed, they haven't come close to taking anything like that. I don't think there's one. I don't think there's a single high pick. DK, like I never would have even considered because I thought he'd go in the top 15. Mm-hmm. Last year, I still think they're biting the bullet on not taking that high receiver pick last year. And I think this is a deep class, but not as good as last year's. And I think they have to pick on this class in that second, third round. There's just too much talent there, and they're playing with fire.
Okay, so let's play the opposite. Let's play, devil's advocate a little bit here. So we talked about how do we think they're going to dump that 56 pick and move back? Do you think there is any chance they move forward one way or another with a player trade and picks from next year, or they bundle up all three and say, screw it, we're going with this guy and we're going home? Like, what do you think there's any chance of that at all? Any of you to move up?
Sure.
I have a real bad gut feeling that they might trade some future draft capital to get back into this draft. And it might not be significant. It might not be, anything above like a 4th round.
That's worked so well with Stephen Sullivan and Connor Sua.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying
capital to get into the 7th round.
But Jeff, could you not see it happening?
Oh yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. Anything that is outlandish and doing the same thing over and over and not working, like you have to think the Seahawks might do it again.
I could see Seattle trading a couple 4 through 7s, whatever it may be, to get back into this year's draft.
To go up higher.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, and because I think that I believe you're kind of probably the most versed on this, and no offense to everyone else, I just, from our conversations, is there any particular player that you're just dying for them to get in any of their rounds, or you're just like best player, whatever?
I won't say there's anyone I'm dying to get. I think one of the centers that Nathan mentioned would be pretty amazing, but to see them slide down to 56, I don't see. There's one receiver that I know Derek, who's on our show and works on our site. He's really good with the receivers in this class. And we've been throwing names back and forth for the last couple of months. There's a guy from Clemson named Amari Rogers, who is very different than Tyler and DK. And I think would complement them very well in the offense I think they're going to run. I still don't know what they're going to run. He's more of a yards after catch, end around, move. Like he can get down the field, but he's not a pure downfield. He would complement what Tyler and DK do really, really well. I think he could be around late second, third, somewhere in that range. And I think he would be really exciting. There's some other guys. There's a guy like De'Ami Brown, who's a really good downfield receiver. He would play the role more what David Moore did, and he's got a lot more upside from North Carolina. I think one of those two guys, to me, would be really interesting with what they have already.
Mm-hmm. What about Evan or Nathan? Either one of you guys? No?
Yeah, I've paid attention a little bit to the receivers. Amari Rogers would be really fun. I like Tylan Wallace a lot. I'm not quite sure where he's supposed to go. And then a late round guy, Cade Johnson. I like him a lot. He's really interesting. And then there are a lot of guys that like I don't know what I think of them as like a receiver. Well, like, so Elijah Moore would be awesome. I think he's going to be gone way before that they pick. But, and then, you know, you have Rondell Moore that's Rondell, right? Yeah. And like, if you look at his, like, where he gets targeted on the field, like it's all like really short stuff in the flats. Like, so you kind of worry about like what kind of a receiver he is, but then you think about some of the stuff that the Rams have done with end arounds and getting guys moving horizontally in the ball in space and stuff like that. And then, you know, he's really, really interesting. He's a little like Mighty Mouse dude. He tested through the roof, but he's like 5'9" or something like that. So
I like him.
yeah. So part of the reason that maybe I want to lean receiver here is that like, it's a really fun class.
Mm-hmm. And there could maybe that's what they were referencing on the radio today with those kind of, you know, mid to late round guys that could be big surprises. Maybe they're talking about some of those wide receivers. That would be really interesting. Evan, anybody you are particularly focused on?
Nobody that wasn't already said before, but if you know, if there's any 26 or 27-year-old receivers, we could be interested in those types of players. So
fair.
That's my contribution.
All right. Who wants them to trade for Julio Jones?
Sure, of course.
Not with that salary.
Really?
No.
Nathan, why?
Why would you not want really,
have
really
you
good
seen
players?
how much they'd have to pay him?
Yeah, that's what you do with good players. You pay them money.
What draft
As long
capital
as
are
they're
they
not
trading?
running backs.
You trade Jamal Adams for him.
Somebody in the super chat said, would you trade Jamal Adams for Julio in a third?
Yes.
For Julio and a third. No.
You people have lost your goddamn minds. What is wrong with you people?
No. If you give me, wait, should I be saying yes?
No. They should be saying no.
That would be.
What do you have against Julio?
I would do Julio in a first.
Oh.
I would do Julio in a first.
I couldn't.
We're talking Madden trades right
No.
now. Oh, for Julio in a first? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but then who plays
I would
safety?
trade Adams straight up for a first, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Julio, DK, and Tyler.
And who plays safety?
I don't know. Who cares? Let's score 50 points.
Marquise Blair is a stud. How dare you?
Yeah, there you
Robin
go.
McDougal's
Marcus Blair,
available.
second round pick.
Yeah, Seattle allocated a high-level piece of draft capital to the safety position. His name is Marquise Blair. He's a stud.
Ugo, put Ugo back there.
Isn't Ugo like 5'5"? in like 200.
There's no height to ride the safety
Just shove
ride.
somebody back. We'll put
Ugo
back there. Why not?
Ugo Amadi is like 120 pounds.
He's a,
Like-
he was drafted as a safety.
Really?
He played safety in college. I mean, he played all over, but yeah.
One game in college when they didn't have one, but it counts.
No,
right?
he played. No.
I'm
He
kidding.
was a safety.
Yeah,
He was a
he was a safety. Yeah.
That dude looks like an Oompa Loompa running around on the field.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like Quandre Diggs is some like Hulk or something.
Oh, that was a great thread today on Twitter, by the way. Him and Bobby Wagner fighting about how tall they were. That was really fun. That was great. That was enjoyable. No, here's the deal, you guys. I know you guys give me a bad time about how much I stick with Jamal Adams, but why is that? Because Dayna much prefers defense over offense. So you got to give me a little slack here. Oh my gosh. Do we have any? What?
You're not going to like this draft. This is a terrible defensive draft.
It's okay. I'm pretty happy with the defense we have.
Okay.
They could get all offensive players this time and I'd be all right with that. I'm actually okay with it the way it is. I didn't say I was happy. I said I was okay.
Evan, I have a question for you.
Oh, that makes me nervous when you say
I've been off Twitter. What is 49ers Twitter like right now? Like their angst level?
Oh,
they were on full out meltdown last week.
Oh, let me tell you, buddy. I have been poking the bear so methodically well over the past week. I've been adding, what's their fucking GM's name?
John Lynch.
Yeah, John Lynch, because he has like a public Twitter account. I've been tweeting him every couple of days, and I'm like, I'm wide awake. I'm sweating profusely. It's midnight. I can't sleep. My body is aching. I'm thinking about Mac Jones terrorizing the Seahawks for the next decade. Do not do this to me. Spare us. Spare us this pain, this eternal pain. And let me tell you, if the 49ers select Mac Jones tomorrow night, I'm a fucking field day on that website tomorrow. Let me tell you.
Man, okay, I'm coming back on Twitter.
I'm going to get doxxed. I'm going to get fucked up. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think that has been a really interesting part of Twitter the last few, the whole 49ers conversation. I think, they understand the first couple picks are done, but who does San Francisco get? Who's going to run that? Well, you remember this is a team that paid Jimmy Garoppolo a ridiculous amount of money. So I don't know that they should be trusted with picking their next quarterback. I don't know that it's such a good idea. I do find it interesting, though, it came out today that supposedly the Patriots are in talk to getting Jimmy Garoppolo back. I don't understand that since Bill Belichick dumped him once. Why would he go back and get him again? But at the same time, you do you, Bill, whatever works. I do think, though, that it has been interesting, the conversations that I have, like I said, I have a lot of other teams on my Twitter line, and everyone is really panicked about this first round. And I find that interesting because these teams just seem to be unsettled. And once again, I think it's because we didn't have the traditional buildup to the draft. We didn't get the combines. We didn't get that sort of thing. The pro days were different. And so I think a lot of people are really nervous.
Can I ask Jeff a question? Because you're on this theme of nervousness. Okay. So I'm going to flip the question back to you, Jeff. Okay. In terms of being a Seahawks fan, what's the worst potential thing being a Seahawks fan that could happen at number 3? Okay. So there's a lot of hype around the number 3 pick. What is the worst, or I guess the best move the 49ers could make? The worst for the Seahawks?
To me, it's Justin Fields. To me, Justin Fields' skill set is unbelievable. To put him in that offense with their weapons, to me, I would be like we've talked about. I think the Niners are set up the best for beyond this year. Like I think maybe Seahawks for this season, but beyond 2021, I think the Niners are by far the best setup. From all indications and for everyone I've talked to, I don't think he's even in consideration. Unless Kyle's just trolling everyone, which is certainly possible.
Totally.
But to me, that would terrify me.
Is it now? Forgive me because once again, I try to ignore quarterbacks most of the time. But do you? He's the kid? Did he play? Is that the kid from North Dakota?
No, it's Trey Lance.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I haven't.
Ohio State.
Okay, Ohio State. Oh yes. Okay, I have them straight again. So sorry about that. Okay. I seriously ignore quarterbacks because I think they're completely overrated most of the time. So.
Most important position in all of sports.
Dayna hates scoring and hates winning football games, so it makes sense.
I like winning. I just don't like the scoring. It's boring.
What if a defense scores?
Well, then that's fun. Quandre Diggs still owes me pick 6. I haven't forgotten. Seriously. Then that's lots of fun. No, I just like to be the opposite on that. I just really do love defensive football games. I miss 80s Raider football where they used to beat everyone crap out of each other. Like I loved that kind of football. So it's just the way it is. Do we have any Patreon questions this week? I don't think we said. We have.
Yeah, Nathan, did you ask for Patreon questions in the Slack? Nathan, did you do that, Nathan? Nathan?
Yeah, and it's weird. I don't see nobody put any questions in here.
No one had any questions this week for us.
We got lazy patrons.
We apologize, listeners.
Hold up. We had a couple of people donate throughout the show. Let me just scroll through and see if there were any questions. Blah, blah, blah. I'd love to hear from each member on how many draft picks the Seahawks will actually end up picking. So that's a good question. Dayna, did I just call you Dayna? Dayna, go.
Nano, I think.
I'm new. He doesn't know me. Sorry.
I've had 2.5 margaritas tonight. Give me some grace.
Dayna. I think Seattle will end up with 5. I think they're going to end up with 5 picks. I think that is a number that would be considered decent amount by the fan base. And I think that's pretty easy to do if you just trade back a little bit, a couple of times. So you even move back just a smidge, because we all know even in that 3rd and 4th round, they're moving up 5 picks, moving back 5 picks, but they'll give them a 7th or whatever, So I think 5.
Jeff?
Yeah, I was going to say 5 too.
Nathan?
6.
Okay, I'm gonna say something outrageous. I think they end up with 9 picks this year, and I think they trade into this year's draft with future draft capital to do it.
All right.
All right. Call your shot then. What are you thinking? Because how do you normally when you trade in from the next year, right? You trade a 5th to get a 4th or whatever, right?
Sure.
So how are you going from 3 to 9 using next year's draft capital?
Well, you trade back a few times with that number 2 pick, and then, add a couple late rounders from 2022. It's not inconceivable.
No.
I will tell you, if John Snyder can figure that out, he'd be freaking we call him a magician as it is during the draft, so that'd be pretty, to go from 3 to 9 would be pretty.
It's really, they could do that. If they wanted to,
but
I'm not saying it'd be smart, but they could do it.
But you just got to keep trading. If you trade back at a 56 to 62, you got 2 picks, and then you trade back again.
Especially if a team, a trading team has a player that they really want there. You could get it.
Teams Minnesota has 14 picks or something
14.
Honestly,
something like that. I can't remember.
I'm GTS in there.
Yeah, hold up. Most picks in 2021 NFL draft. It is the Eagles who have 11.
Okay, that's close.
I think is what I'm seeing. Yeah.
That's still a crazy number.
Fewest selection. Okay, yeah. Fewest selections is the Seahawks 3. That reminds me. Did you guys see the tweet I sent in our group chat in the past couple of days? Where it was the Seahawks have a 0.2% chance of ending this draft with the most value or something like that out of this year's draft. I just thought that was funny.
I read the Jaguars picked 4 times before the Seahawks picked once.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jags
with two coaches from the Pete Carroll coaching tree.
I know it's gonna be so depressing though watching.
Dayna.
What?
The Jags have more playoff success than the Seahawks do in the past 5 years.
Oh, I understand that. I totally, sort of. They also have really
not sort of. Thank you.
You have to look at it this way. How many years have they been horrifically bad?
How many playoff wins did the Jags have in 5 years?
There's not the consistent. We like consistency, Evan. We like consistency.
Consistency in losing to 4-fingered quarterbacks in the wild card. Okay, I'm sorry.
You really just need to be a Rams fan.
This is, you know what? This is emotional trauma. This is emotional trauma that is resurfacing.
They did it with Blake.
Here's the thing. Today on the radio, they were gushing, and I mean gushing, over a Darrell Bevel, Brian Schottenheimer combination in Jacksonville. And, excuse me, and how amazing it was going to be. And I was like, okay. They're well respected. They're team players. They, are great with young quarterbacks. I'm like, okay. Just was really impressed. So anyway, I thought that was
That'd be pretty amazing content though if those guys turn out to be incredible.
Can you imagine?
but they have to be together at all times because it's the two of them together.
If Shoddy like turns Trevor Lawrence into like a first team All Pro.
Oh, Jesus.
Evans,
If they start winning playoff games all of a sudden off Brian Schottenheimer's innovative offense.
I don't know how much credit Shoddy should get for a Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer offense. Like, assuming that even works. Like,
is he passing coordinator?
Yeah. Future head coach Brian Schottenheimer.
I still think that's going to happen. I still have money that's happening.
Jeff shits on that all the time, and I love it.
He got demoted.
Listen, they're very nice men, both of them. So we're not disparaging them. We're just disparaging the image. So yes, for sure.
Actually, I like Shoddy. I thought he did.
I did too. He's a nice guy. Yeah.
I still don't think he got fired.
For what I thought he was coming in, which was like a Pete robot, I was actually pretty impressed with how he changed. We'll see if
he was okay.
He was better than I thought. I thought he was a total disaster.
Oh, I think all of Seahawks Twitter did too, because that's all we heard about was what a disaster he'd be. Crazy. All right. So you guys believe the boys, correct me if I'm wrong, Evan, but I believe that you boys are going to hop on Friday after Seattle picks, right? If they pick them right.
Why do you say the boys as if like you're not being there? Are you
I'm out of town. Remember I told you I was out of town.
Ah, frick. Yeah. Your takes, your emotional takes can't be solidified in stone like ours will be. So
I'll put them on the record in chat. I promise.
That's okay. Yeah. So the Seahawks are obviously at present moment not picking tomorrow, but as they get closer to 56 is what I think it is. We will jump on, I think, 10, 15 minutes beforehand. And if the Seahawks do the miraculous and they end up trading up, then we will be jumping on very quickly with like 2 minutes heads up. So this is a great opportunity actually for me to plug our YouTube channel, which you're watching this on. Subscribe, hit the bell icon. Okay. For alerts, you'll be alerted immediately when we go live. So you don't want to be watching our Twitter feeds constantly. Maybe you do. Maybe we're that entertaining. Subscribe on YouTube. You'll see us immediately. That's the best way to stay in contact for this weekend. But I think we are just doing the first pick. Is that right, gents? Yeah.
But you know that if something amazing happens, you guys will all
actually hold up. I want to see Nathan's reaction to like a 28-year-old receiver in the 6th round. I do want to see that.
I mean, I think that might be Cade Johnson. I think he's overaged and I like him. So yeah, let's do it.
That'd be good. Also, everyone, remember to give a thumbs up on that YouTube, please. Also, that's very helpful to us. And then of course, there's our Patreon. You guys need to go join. We have a great time over at the Slack channel, chit-chatting. I got 2 comments today. I'm going to plug this because I feel like every once in a while I have to remind people that I kind of actually know what I'm talking about. So Teddy Bridgewater got picked up by Denver today. Back April 16th, I said, Teddy Bridgewater, what if he ends up in Denver? And I got lambasted by 2 guys on our Slack. They're like, no, that's ridiculous. It will never happen. They did give me kudos today. So I'll say that. But the amazing conversations that happen over there, I'm so impressed. And people get into really in-depth conversations on the Slack channel. So come join our Patreon. We have a great time.
Dayna, can we talk Broncos for a second?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm confused because my impression was that they were still in on Drew Lock, like he was still the guy. But now they're trading for Teddy, and everybody freaked out. Like, why would you trade for Teddy? You should just draft someone. And then it came out afterwards that like people were like, my sources are telling me that this doesn't rule out taking somebody with their first pick or whatever. So are they just out on Drew Lock? Is he? I mean, he's bad. Like, I don't think that's a secret, right? But I thought the team was still rolling with him.
I don't know that they're ready. So this is from what I've read and a couple like sources, and because I do cover this team during the regular season, they're not completely out on Drew Lock. I think they're not quite sure what they have because the rest of the team is quite the disaster too. You have to keep that in mind. They have a lot of problems on that team. And I think that they're having a struggle just completely saying, again, after every other quarterback that they have gone through since Peyton Manning, to say, dump him, move on. They just, I think they're struggling with that a little bit. Teddy Bridgewater is an insurance policy. We all know that, right? We all know Teddy Bridgewater is, unfortunately for him, that injury just, he never has been the same. He was so good before he got hurt, and it bothers me so much for him that he's not, still that player. But he is a fantastic insurance policy. So I don't know. And I'm sure the word can't battle will get thrown around if they don't pick somebody, or even if they do pick a quarterback. But I think that we're going to have to see how Drew Lock responds to that. And then they'll kind of make that decision. But the impression I get is Denver's just not ready to throw away yet another quarterback that they were so high on and he was going to be it. So I do wonder too, with John Elway changing his position and role a little bit, if that has something to do with this. Yeah. And that they're ready to say, okay, we'll see, and then be ready to yank him the minute they need to.
So they have a new general manager there who's the new control, George, I think it's either Patton or Payton. Mm-hmm. And he was like the remember what Chris Ballard, sort of his reputation around the league is? This was sort of that kind of guy.
Yeah.
The teams were trying to hire him for a long time. He finally took that job. And he has no ties to Drew Lock. He was not apparently a big Drew Lock guy. They were sniffing around Stafford. And if you remember, Peyton was with Minnesota, and Minnesota drafted Teddy Bridgewater. So this is more of a new, he's their stopgap, and he provides insurance for if they draft someone.
He's a known commodity. I think that's kind
of someone they know, and the guy who's been around them drafted Teddy, was with them in Minnesota. If Trey Lance falls to 9 tomorrow, I think they're going to pick him.
Gotcha.
If not, I just don't think I think John Elway was just making bad quarterback decision after bad quarterback decision. I think he finally acknowledged it by moving out of there. Mm-hmm. I think Locke is the guy that Elway really wanted to work out, and I don't believe the new guy is a believer in Locke.
And the thing with Drew Lock, and people might not agree with me, but he has moments where you're like, oh, he just needs this. He just needs this. He just needs, something, but then it never comes to fruition. Like, you just never get a full package out of him. But so I could see where they're like, well, maybe no, and kind of hedge that a little bit. I don't know. It's real interesting.
I see. Gotcha.
Yeah, I see. But I love that about football is we can analyze Seattle forever, but then there's all these other teams that have a lot more problems than Seattle does. People, you need to remember that sometimes. And it makes you feel a little bit better as a Seahawks fan.
They're in a hell of a division. The Chargers are going to be really good.
Love Justin Herbert. And I don't like quarterbacks, and I like Justin Herbert. So, all right, you guys. Well, that is our show for tonight. Again, subscribe, hit the bell. Then you'll know exactly when we go live to talk about the draft and the lack of, or according to Evan, ginormous number of picks that we are going to end up